The Master Tavern Keeper's History of the Old World. And so, it was at this point that the dwarf Drogo paused in his retelling of the rescue of his twin brother Drogar to regale us with details of the events leading up to the theft of the runesmith Snorri Spanglehelm's Compass of Finding itself. The Boyer's Brew Tavern in Saltkalten, Ostland, in the year 1551 of the Imperial calendar. What? So, am I right in assuming that the compass was stolen out from under the noses of the sea engineers in their own guild hall by the infamous Cassio the Cat?
Oh yes, it was me young scallywag. Damning Cragbrow told me the sorry tale, in detail, without reservation, just before I agreed to go retrieve it.
Och, now Septimus, I'm sorry to interrupt you so soon, but are you telling us that a little kitty cat stole this here compass? How did it carry it? Doesn't seem like the sort of thing it could easily pop into its little mouth.
What? No. Cassio the Cat wasn't a feline cat. He was a cat burglar. The most infamous thief of the 14th century, in point of fact.
Oh, yeah, that's right, Master Tavern Keeper. My grandpapa oft regaled me with the dramatic exploits of Cassio the Cat, Jules thief extraordinaire, when I was a child. I remember being on the edge of my seat when I heard how he pilfered the black periapt on behalf of a mysterious vampire benefactor, and I shrieked with excitement when I listened to the tale of the recovery of the Gem of Nightmares and the Crystal of Midnight from that treacherous dark elf hag sorceress, only to return them to the Witch King for a chest full of gold. After those exploits, though, he disappeared, of course, his fate and whereabouts a mystery.
Ah, well, in that case, I believe what Damning told Drogo could solve that mystery for you. But before we get to all that, let us first turn our attention to the instigator of this whole incident, as his tragedy also shines a light on the oft overlooked darker side of the Dwarf Guild of Sea Engineers. The Guild Hall of the Sea Engineers, Barak Var, in the year 1476 of the Imperial calendar.
Lord, avast ye! 'Twas no mean feat what Cassio the Cat did, but he wouldn't have even bothered if one of our own hadn't enticed him in, and so perhaps it is for that reason that we have ourselves to blame for the whole mess.
What do you mean, Master Engineer? Look, you'd better explain. If you're trying to convince me to dive headfirst into the harbour, as it seems a must, then I need to know it all.
Fair enough. Then avast ye well, my brave Angthraker.
The Expulsion of Okek Steelhammer.
'Twas many years ago that I began my apprenticeship here in the Sea Engineers Guild. 'Twas a small cohort that year, a mere half-dozen. Of these, 4 still number amongst my best friends, but one, the most brilliant of us, Okek Steelhammer, never was. He was a dowie apart. Okek's family, the Steelhammers, had quite the pedigree. They've turned out many brilliant engineers over the centuries, but Okek was a cut above even these. He solved each of the mathematical equations our master would set us in less time than it takes an anchor to strike the seabed. And he had such a tight grasp upon the engineering techniques, concepts and methods that we learnt that he'd finish the mechanical challenges we were given daily in half the time we were allotted. He was simply gifted, and he knew it. He soon started experimenting on his own, beginning with a complex drill to be used in mining, and then he created a pump for getting seawater out of the slowly eroding caves close to the sea gate. But then he finally became completely obsessed with the creation and perfection of an alcohol vapor engine to power them both. Our master frowned on these potentially revolutionary innovations, oft chiding young Okek with the phrase,
"No, apprentice. New ideas lead to trouble. We stick to what we know here."
Okek didn't listen though, and refused to stop tinkering with his inventions. The tension between master and apprentice grew and grew. We quickly became used to hearing our master shouting at Okek, as the young Dowey simply smiled and nodded, ignoring it all. It came to such an impasse that I remember coming into the workshop one morning and being stopped in my tracks by a large new plaque on the wall, emblazoned with the old proverb,
"Tradition must be respected, for it is the voice of our ancestors."
But Okek, too, paid this no mind, and continued to refine his alcohol vapor engine and his other creations. At last, our master laid down the gauntlet.
"If you're so confident in your work, then submit your best engine to the scrutiny of the guild's longbeards and see what they say. If you're not, then abandon your experimenting and start towing the line."
Avast, shiver me timbers, Okek plumped for the former, and spent another month perfecting his alcohol vapor engine for inspection. But before that could happen, he had to face an intense interrogation by his more experienced peers, the Longbeards of the Sea Guild. They began by picking and poking at his understanding of the principles of engineering. Okek was calm and confident though, and they couldn't knock his grasp of the fundamentals. Next, they set him mechanical tasks to be completed under their supervision. He succeeded in every one, in fine time and by the book. They couldn't find fault with his skill. Finally, they delved into his experience and background. These areas failed to satisfy them, as Okek was still young, and his family, the Steelhammers, although they produced some fine upstanding engineers, have also made the same amount of mavericks. This wasn't enough to warrant expulsion, although I do know that they talked about forcing Okek to endure the trouser legs ritual to test his mettle, but in the end they decided against it. At last, Okek's engine was presented to the senior sea engineers. The Longbeards of the guild approached it as they always do when they get something new. Newness is frowned upon. They poked and prodded, shook and manhandled his engine, tugging on its cylinders, trying to find loose bits, failing to, and then saying it was too rigid when it didn't come apart in their hands. Next, they queried Okek on the principles behind his engine, questioning if they even needed it. He answered them in his usual calm way, pointing to its speed and efficiency. At last, it came to testing it, Sure enough, it performed smooth and quick, its combustion chambers driving the attached pumps like a whip-mad dwarf on a pony, outperforming any other engine I've ever seen. It ran without a hitch for a whole week, when suddenly one of the engineers, a dwarf called Okek Coppercloak, decided to take a hammer to it to test its sturdiness. He and the other engineers didn't survive the fiery explosion. The guildmaster at the time, Mugrud Metalforged, laid the blame fully upon Okek's shoulders. Okek was given a choice: submit to severe punishment or face exile. Horrified at the possibility of being exiled, he agreed to endure whatever punishment they decided upon. Firstly, they said he needed to undergo the penance of quaffing, and he was duly force-fed several gallons of oil. But, shiver me timbers, he did it without puking his guts up. Although after he lay in his cot for 3 days, plagued by a painful bellyache, unable to consume neither ale nor food. Next, Okek was subjected to the penance of blackbearding. He had to use his beard to wipe down all of the oily, soot-stained contraptions in Mugrud's workshop. I've never seen a dwarf look so haggard. Lastly, he was subjected to the penance of cogging. Okek was stripped naked and made to drag a chain of oversized cogs around the circumference of the entire guild hall. After that, Okek expected forgiveness and to be able to continue with his experimenting, but bitter old Mugrud had no intention of forgiving such a loss to the guild, and he exiled Okek anyway. Okek was incandescent with rage, and, swearing vengeance on Mugrud, left, stealing whatever he could carry so he can continue on with his work. Ha! It was also later discovered that he even pinched the guild's book of bad ideas to yet further his studies in directions wholly prohibited by the guild.
I can well imagine his anger and understand his response.
But Mugrud, the guildmaster, did not seem to care. He was old. Although it may have played on his mind, for as soon as he retired, he boarded his boat with a selection of his closest apprentices and disappeared off out into the open seas. No one ever saw him again.
Fascinating. But what has all this got to do with Cassio the Cat and the compass of finding, Master Engineer?
Ah! By the brightness sea, you've been very patient. I was waiting for you to ask. Here's the rub, my brave Angthragar. Okek could neither forgive nor forget his treatment at the hands of the old guildmaster. And when Mugrud disappeared, Okek lost the most obvious, tangible target for his hate. He was at a loss. He wanted Mugrud's head, but what could he do? That was until he remembered the compass of finding, housed in the guild itself. That could help him find his quarry, he thought, and thus he resolved, somehow, someday, to steal it, use it to find Mugrud, and kill him, as well as dealing the Sea Guild itself a blow for the loss of such a unique and powerful artifact would truly anger all the engineers in the guild. And so Okek
bided his time and waited until finally fate interceded and he found himself in front of the renowned thief from Miragliano. And he thought to himself, who better to sneak in and pilfer the compass than Cassio the cat?